When we think of Henry Ford, we often picture the man who revolutionized the automobile industry by perfecting the assembly line and making cars accessible to the masses. His name is synonymous with industrial efficiency, innovation, and the birth of modern manufacturing practices. Ford's Model T became one of the most iconic cars in history, and his vision transformed the way goods were produced, changing the course of the 20th century. But behind his achievements in the automotive industry lies a multifaceted figure whose experiments and beliefs extended far beyond cars and factories. In this video, we're going to explore 5 surprising facts about Henry Ford that may change the way you think about it. When Henry Ford introduced the assembly line, he revolutionized not only the automobile industry, but the entire world of manufacturing. The concept of mass production, breaking down tasks into smaller, repeatable steps, allowed Ford to produce cars faster and more efficiently than ever before. The Model T, Ford's most famous creation, became the first affordable car for the average American, and the production techniques used to build it became the gold standard for industrial efficiency. Ford's assembly line is considered a milestone in the history of industrialization, but this was far from the only area where he was willing to innovate. What many people don't know is that Henry Ford was also deeply interested in agriculture, particularly in how it could serve industry. In the 1930s, Ford began experimenting with soybeans as a way to create new materials and even food products. He saw soybeans as a crop with immense potential, not just for feeding people, but for producing industrial goods. Ford was particularly interested in the possibility of using soybeans to create artificial food and materials. He envisioned a future where crops like soybeans could be used to make plastics, fabrics, and even car parts. Ford's fascination with soybeans led him to build one of the largest soybean processing plants in the world at the time. He believed that soybeans could become a cornerstone of a new form of industrial agriculture, where plants could be transformed into raw materials for everything from car components to foodstuffs. In fact, Ford himself was known to consume soy-based foods, and he once famously wore a suit made entirely from soy-based fibers. Ford's interest in soybeans wasn't just a fleeting curiosity. It was part of his larger vision of making industries self-sufficient and sustainable. He believed that industry and agriculture should be closely intertwined, and that by harnessing the power of plants like soybeans, the United States could achieve greater economic independence. Although Ford's experiments with artificial food from soybeans never fully materialized on a large scale, they reflect his innovative spirit and his willingness to explore unconventional ideas. When people think of Henry Ford, they naturally think of cars, specifically the mass-produced, gasoline-powered automobiles that made personal transportation a reality for millions. The Model T is perhaps the most iconic of these vehicles, representing Ford's vision of affordable and accessible transportation. Ford is often credited with putting the world on wheels, but his ambitions extended beyond the traditional materials used in car manufacturing. While he is best known for metal and steel automobiles, Ford was also interested in exploring the potential of plastics. In the 1940s, Ford began experimenting with the idea of building cars out of plastic. He believed that plastic could become the material of the future for the automotive industry, as it was lighter, cheaper, and more versatile than steel. Ford's team developed a prototype car with a plastic body, which was designed to be stronger and more resistant to damage than conventional cars. The plastic used in this experimental car was made from a combination of soybeans, wheat, and other agricultural products, a continuation of Ford's belief in the potential of plant-based materials. This soybean car, as it came to be known, was introduced to the public in 1941. Ford himself demonstrated the car's durability by striking it with an axe, an iconic moment that showcased the material's strength. The plastic car was 30% lighter than a traditional steel car, which Ford believed would lead to greater fuel efficiency and lower production costs. He also saw it as a way to reduce America's dependence on steel, which was in high demand during World War II. Although the plastic car never went into mass production, largely due to the onset of the war and the need to focus on other priorities, it remains one of Ford's most fascinating innovations. His efforts to explore alternative materials for car manufacturing highlight his forward-thinking approach and his desire to push the boundaries of what was possible in the automotive industry. While the plastic car didn't become a reality during his lifetime, the idea of using lighter and more sustainable materials in car manufacturing continues to influence the industry today. Henry Ford's influence extended far beyond the borders of the United States. As one of the world's most successful industrialists, he was always looking for ways to expand his empire and implement his ideas on a global scale. One of Ford's most ambitious, yet ultimately disastrous, projects was the creation of a utopian city in the heart of the Amazon rainforest in Brazil, known as Fordlandia. Ford's vision for this city was driven by his desire to secure a stable source of rubber for his automobile empire, but it also reflected his broader belief in social engineering and his desire to create a model society based on his ideals. In the 1920s, Ford's company was heavily reliant on rubber for the production of tires and other car components. At the time, most of the world's rubber supply came from British-controlled plantations in Southeast Asia, and Ford wanted to break free from this dependency. He struck a deal with the Brazilian government to acquire a large tract of land in the Amazon rainforest, where he planned to establish a rubber plantation and build a city that would reflect his ideals of efficiency, productivity, and social harmony. Fordlandia was designed to be a self-sustaining community, complete with modern housing, schools, hospitals, and recreational facilities. Ford envisioned it as a place where workers would live according to his strict moral and social codes, which included bans on alcohol and a strong emphasis on healthy living. However, the project quickly encountered a series of problems. The workers, many of whom were indigenous Brazilians, resented Ford's paternalistic policies and the harsh working conditions on the plantation. The tropical environment proved difficult for growing rubber trees, and Ford's engineers were ill-prepared to handle the challenges of operating in the Amazon. By the late 1930s, Fordlandia was a failure. The rubber trees were ravaged by disease, the infrastructure of the city was falling apart, and the workers were in open revolt against Ford's management. Despite pouring millions of dollars into the project, Ford was forced to abandon his dream of creating a utopian city in the Amazon. Today, Fordlandia stands as a ghost town, a symbol of Ford's overreach and the limits of his influence outside the world of manufacturing. Fordlandia's failure serves as a reminder that even the most successful entrepreneurs can falter when their ambitions extend beyond their core expertise. While Ford is rightly celebrated for his contributions to the automotive industry, his attempt to impose his vision of an ideal society on a foreign land was a cautionary tale about the dangers of hubris. Henry Ford is often praised for his groundbreaking labor policies, particularly his introduction of the 8-hour workday and the $5 a day wage, both of which were revolutionary at the time. In an era when many factory workers labored for long hours under grueling conditions, Ford's decision to limit the workday to 8 hours and pay his employees a high wage was seen as both progressive and enlightened. He believed that by treating his workers well, he could improve their productivity and loyalty, which would ultimately benefit his company. Ford's decision to increase wages and reduce working hours wasn't just an act of generosity. It was a calculated move to reduce turnover and ensure that his workers could afford the very cars they were producing. By raising wages, Ford helped create a new class of consumers, his workers, who could buy the Model T and other products, thus fueling demand and expanding the market for his cars. His approach to labor relations became known as Fordism, and it was widely adopted by other manufacturers as a model for improving worker morale and productivity. However, Ford's approach to managing his workforce wasn't without controversy. While he improved working conditions and wages, he also sought to exert control over his employees' personal lives. In 1914, Ford established a sociological department within his company, which was tasked with monitoring workers' behavior both inside and outside the factory. The department's agents would visit workers' homes to ensure they were living according to Ford's strict moral code, which included prohibitions on alcohol, gambling, and other immoral activities. Ford believed that by improving workers' moral and social lives, he could create a more stable and productive workforce. However, many employees resented this intrusion into their private lives, viewing it as an overreach of power. The sociological department became a source of tension within the company, and its practices were eventually scaled back as public opinion turned against Ford's paternalistic management style. While Ford's labor policies were groundbreaking in many ways, his desire to control every aspect of his workers' lives reveals a darker side to his management philosophy. It highlights the tension between Ford's vision of industrial efficiency and his authoritarian approach to worker relations. Henry Ford is best known for his contributions to the development of the gasoline-powered automobile. His Model T, the first mass-produced car, was designed to run on gasoline, and it played a key role in the rise of the American car culture. However, what is less well known is that Ford was also a strong advocate for using ethanol as an alternative fuel source. Ford believed that ethanol, which could be produced from crops like corn and other plants, had the potential to become a viable alternative to gasoline. In the early 20th century, when gasoline was still a relatively new and expensive fuel, Ford saw ethanol as a renewable, sustainable resource that could be produced locally and help reduce America's dependence on foreign oil. He was particularly interested in the idea of using ethanol to support rural economies by providing farmers with a new source of income. In fact, Ford's early models of the Model T were designed to run on ethanol as well as gasoline. He believed that as the technology for producing ethanol improved, it would become a popular and widely used fuel. However, the rise of the oil industry and the increasing availability of cheap gasoline soon eclipsed ethanol as a fuel source. The automobile industry quickly became dependent on gasoline, and Ford's vision of an ethanol-powered future faded into the background. Despite this, Ford remained an advocate for renewable energy throughout his life. He saw the potential for ethanol to reduce pollution and provide a cleaner, more sustainable energy source. While his ideas about ethanol were ahead of their time, they laid the groundwork for future discussions about alternative fuels and renewable energy. Today, as the world grapples with the environmental impact of fossil fuels, Ford's early support for ethanol and other biofuels is seen as prescient. His belief in the potential of renewable energy reflects his forward-thinking approach and his willingness to challenge the status quo, even in an industry he helped create. In conclusion, Henry Ford was a man of many contradictions. He revolutionized the automotive industry with his innovations in mass production, but his interests extended far beyond cars and factories. From his experiments with soybeans and plastic cars to his failed attempt to build a utopian city in the Amazon, Ford was always looking for new ways to push the boundaries of what was possible. His groundbreaking labor policies improved working conditions for millions of factory workers, but his desire to control every aspect of his employees' lives revealed a more authoritarian side to his management style. Ford's advocacy for ethanol as an alternative fuel source shows that even as he revolutionized the gasoline-powered car, he was thinking about the future of renewable energy. His legacy is one of innovation, experimentation, and ambition, and while not all of his ideas were successful, they reflect the boundless creativity and vision that defined defined his career. So, the next time you think of Henry Ford, remember that he was more than just the man who built the Model T. He was a visionary whose ideas extended far beyond the world of automobiles, and his influence continues to shape the world we live in today. Thank you for watching, and if you found these facts about Henry Ford surprising, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating insights into history's most influential figures.